Hi, this is Ken for the Bryant Museum staff, and we got Barrett Jones with us today. So glad you can join us here on Facebook, uh, YouTube, and our other outlets here for our fans that follow the Bryant Museum. Good morning.
Morning. How we doing?
Doing pretty good. So tell everybody how your family and you are doing during this coronavirus situation.
Well, we're hanging in there. We actually just had our first child, so we've had a very interesting time during this whole deal, and trying to navigate the waters of parenthood along with quarantine. So there's been a lot going on, but had a boy, and he's a junior, and so calling him Anderson, which is my middle name. So Anderson Jones, and he's about 2.5 weeks old now, and he's doing great. So it's been a lot of fun, and very blessed to have a great mama, thankfully, who's doing a much better job taking care of him than I am. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a fun adventure, but I think we're all kind of ready for this to be over. Who knows what things will look like here in the next few months.
Well, congratulations from all of us here at the museum and all our fans on Facebook and beyond. Have y'all gotten any sleep?
A little bit. He actually had his best night last night. So my wife's been doing a great job. She's a champ of, feeding him in the middle of the night. So thankfully she's given me some breaks, and been able to sleep a little bit more maybe than she has. So I don't want to take too much credit when really she's the one doing most of the work.
Yeah,
she's a great. I've learned the key to this whole deal is having a great woman. That's the best deal here. So I have a really great wife, and she's doing a great job taking care of him.
Yeah, I learned that, and I also learned to say, "Hey, the baby's calling you." So,
well, I don't know. I'm not sure I'm quite man enough for that one yet. Maybe later down the road.
So we want to talk a little bit with you today. We got some questions from our followers on Facebook, and we'll go through some of those. I'll mix in a few as we go through it. We appreciate your time.
Sure.
So tell us how you, when you first got contacted, what was the first contact from the university when you found out they were interested in you?
So actually, my recruiting story is a little bit funny because after my sophomore season, I scheduled 3 different camps to go visit. I went to visit the Auburn camp, the Tennessee camp, and the Alabama camp. And so the Auburn camp was actually the first one I went to, and went down there and stayed for about 2 days. And at the end of the camp, which, by the way, I went to a mid-sized kind of Christian small high school, and didn't really have any idea how I stacked up, against other competition. I just started as a sophomore, and we'd won the state championship. I wasn't really sure how I was going to stack up, and so went down there and I guess stacked up pretty well because they offered me at the end of that down at Auburn. Tommy Tuberville gave me my first offer, and then I actually went to Tennessee's camp and they offered me, and then I went to Alabama's camp and they actually didn't offer me. So it was a different coaching staff at the time. It was Mike Shula, and I was obviously interested in Alabama just because that's where my dad had gone, and was disappointed, I remember, to not initially receive the offer, but they told me they were interested and they were going to keep kind of looking at me. And so I had a little bit of communication with them that next season, but probably things, and they did eventually offer me. But things changed a lot, I would say, when Coach Saban became the coach there. He called me pretty early on in that whole process. That would have been, I'm trying to think, it was January, and they played 1 season. So I guess probably January of my junior year. I guess that'd be right. So right after my junior football seasons when he got hired. You probably know better than I do. January, February, wasn't it sometime around there? And so right after that, after my junior season, he really started calling me a lot and ramping up kind of the recruiting. And at that point, I was very interested. And he came to visit me at some point for my in-home visit. I remember that. And, I went on my official. It all kind of runs together. But somewhere along the way, I just kind of figured out that was probably going to be the best fit for me. And that was probably where I was going to be most comfortable.
What assistant coach was recruiting you?
Kevin Steele, so who's now obviously the defensive coordinator at Auburn, but loved Kevin Steele, still see him pretty often, and he's a great guy and was a great recruiter. And really enjoyed spending time with him. He was probably one of the big reasons that I ended up going to Alabama, because of how much I loved Kevin Steele, and just thought he's a great man, a good person, and a really good football coach. So he was a great fit for me with my family, and he spent a lot of good time at our house hanging out, and just coming by and visiting, and having run-ins in the hallways and everything. The rules were a little different back then. There's a lot of run-ins in the hallways, and so of school, where you'd accidentally happen upon a recruiter. But yeah, it was he did a great job, and it was one of the big reasons why I ended up committing.
Obviously, Coach Saban is a big influence in the players' lives. Tell us some of the things that you've taken away from him, and maybe that you want to pass on to your son from Coach Saban.
Definitely. I could probably take, in fact, I do speak still sometimes, and could probably talk about that for at least an hour on a lot of the things I learned. But I would say, if I was going to boil it down, I think generally Coach Saban gets a lot of credit for how good of a job he does as a football coach, but maybe not enough credit for the job he does of really molding young men. And I came to Alabama, and I'm not going to be over dramatic. I was probably decently mature for a high school kid, but still came as a boy in a lot of ways. And I feel like I really left a man because of a lot of things he taught me. And I think, honestly, as cliche as it sounds, probably just the process, it's really had a huge impact on my life. And really kind of the mindset of really not comparing yourself to others, of setting a standard for your life, of what you want to be, of the kind of person you want to be, the things you want to achieve, and not living your life by comparison, and constantly looking around and figuring out if you're doing better than other people, but really living your life to a standard. And I think I've kind of taken that and really applied it to all areas of my life, not just football, but now in my jobs, and with my wife and my relationships, and now as a dad, and as a friend, and my spiritual life, just the way that I want to pursue my faith. I think that you can apply that really to any aspect of your life, where you really just kind of focus on working hard at it, and focus on the process of getting better at it every day, instead of being consumed with results and being consumed with comparison. So I've had to boil it down to one thing. That's probably what I would say, but he taught me a lot of things. Obviously, work ethic, how to be disciplined, effort, how to give great effort, how to fight through adversity. I mean, there's a lot of things we could talk about here, but that's some of the key points probably that I've taken away, and have had a huge impact on my life.
Talk about some of the assistant coaches that also influenced you.
Yeah, I had a bunch of those too. I mentioned Coach Steele. He definitely had an impact on me. And I always say, once you get to when you're looking at a school, obviously it's good to know your recruiter, but the guys you really want to pay attention to, it's good to know your head coach, is your position coaches. That's the guys you're going to spend so much time with, and with the strength coach. That's the other guy you're going to spend a lot of time with. And so, starting with my position coaches, Coach Pendry was my coach for my first 3 years. Learned a lot from him. And then Coach Stoutland, who was, we had a tremendous relationship, and just the timing of my junior and senior year, getting to spend it with them was a lot of fun. Obviously, both of those were national championships too, which made it a lot more fun. So I love both of those guys. In fact, they both were at my wedding a few years ago because they had such an impact on my life, and I just learned a bunch from them. And the other guy, maybe he's not quite as popular right now, but is Coach Cochran. I learned so much from Coach Cochran, and he really taught me a lot. And I think he did a fantastic job with me while I was there, of helping to mold me, and obviously make me stronger physically, but also stronger mentally. And some of the guys just on his staff were tremendous. So I thought he did a great job, and was a huge part of why we had success at that time.
You played a lot of positions on the offensive line. Was that a challenge to change from year to year?
Yeah, it was. But I was fortunate that really, when I was making those switches, generally they were done in the off season. It wasn't like I was necessarily switching in the middle of the season. So I did have some time to make those preparations and to kind of switch my brain around. One of the hardest things is really just training your mind, because when you're on the right side and you hear a word, that means one thing, and when you're on the left side, you hear that same word, it means really the opposite thing. Most practically, it might mean, if you're on the right side and you're in pass protection, that, hey, you have a little bit of help from the center if you're playing guard, or if you're playing tackle, then you have help from the guard. And then on the other side, it means that you have no help, because obviously the line's sliding the other direction. So you have to kind of just train your mind that way. And then also just training your footwork and technique, and learning how to have the other stances, and learning how to move your body and your feet in the way you need to do it. So I don't think it was any, like, I know that's kind of my MO, that was special, but I think it just kind of was honestly the way things happened and turned out. That Coach Saban, his philosophy was that he always wanted to get the best 5 on the field. And a lot of times we had to move guys around in order to do that. And I guess I was a somewhat versatile piece. I was, master of none. So I guess I was average at every position. So they just felt like they could move me around and put me, and I would figure it out. So, it was an adventure. My first year, really, I played left tackle when I was my redshirt year. And then my second year, moved to right guard, played right guard for 2 seasons, and then left tackle again my junior year, and then my senior year played center. So got a little bit of exposure everywhere. I always thought that the coaches really had it out for me, because when I first started playing right guard my first year, I blocked Terrence Cody like the whole time. And I think that probably set my body back like 5 years, just because he was obviously a lot of weight to move around. And then after that, after Terrence Cody left, I ended up having to block Marcel Darius, who that was probably the hardest guy I ever had to block, just because of how physical he was. And obviously he's had a great NFL career. And then, as soon as Marcel graduated and left, I thought finally I'll get a break. They moved me to left tackle, and I had to block Courtney Upshaw every day in practice. And then my last year, Courtney graduated, and then they moved me to center, and I had to block Jesse Williams, who was a great player, especially had some injuries that he fought through. But when he was healthy, he was very, very tough. So I had a really tough go in practice of the guys I had to go up against and block. But I guess it made me better. And even though, again, probably, maybe when I'm 80, I'll be singing a different tune. But I'm kidding. I don't regret it, and it was a lot of fun.
And when you move to center, there's a lot of responsibilities for making the calls and the pre-snap decisions. Did you embrace that? Do you enjoy doing that?
Definitely, yeah. That was probably my favorite thing about center was, I'm an oldest child of 3 boys, and I've always had a little, maybe a weakness of wanting to be bossy. And so that gave me an outlet to really be able to be in charge, and I liked that. I tried to do a lot of that even when I was at left tackle and guard, and probably shouldn't have in a lot of times. But now when I was at center, I really was in charge and got to kind of bark the orders, and so I enjoyed that. I enjoyed setting the protections, helping AJ kind of figure out where we wanted to block. That was a fun mental challenge, and again, probably my favorite thing about playing center.
And one of the questions we got from our followers on Facebook, they want you to talk about your trips, plural, to the White House.
Yeah, I definitely had some really fun times going to the White House. Was very blessed to be able to do that. Went 3 times, obviously. Almost didn't go my last time just because I'd already been and I was, training, getting ready. But I just figured, why not make it the last time? And so it was fun. It really was, to get to go and experience that, and got to see something a little bit new every time. And we went to some museums and did some fun things while we were down there. But I really, it really was special. The first time was obviously my first time in the White House. And then the next time I got to present the jersey, which was fun. And I think the third time, I can't really remember what it is, but I got to kind of be a little bit more part of the ceremony. So it was definitely neat, and it was a cool experience. And I'm a kind of a history guy anyway, and so I really enjoyed looking at all the paintings and seeing all the history that had happened in those hallways. It was pretty neat, and I know that now it's one of the cool things to do in some, not necessarily in college, but in the professional ranks and everything, to say you don't want to go to the White House. But I would encourage anyone who ever gets an opportunity, you should check it out, because it's really it's a cool part of history, and it really was very neat.
Another question was that we just went through the NFL draft. Tell our folks about what your feelings were and what it's like to go through that and be a part of that experience too.
Yeah, that's a wild experience. I remember on draft night for me, there was one of 3 teams or so I thought might draft me, and ended up getting taken by none of those teams. Got drafted by the Rams. Hadn't really talked to them much at all, and so it's really for me it was a big faith building exercise of not having any control. And I knew that I was going to be in one of 32 cities that next day, and so or not literally the next day, but that was going to be my home. The next, and I was going to find out on national television. It's really kind of a weird thing when you think about it, that you literally find out where you're going to move. I know everyone thinks about it so much about the teams, but I was thinking about it more like real life. That I'm going to have to move to that city for a few years probably, and so I was blessed to get to move to St. Louis, which I really enjoyed living there. But it's definitely a crazy experience, and the NFL in general is a crazy experience, and so it was a fun adventure. It was one of those things that obviously had some trouble with injuries, but I'm glad I did it. But I definitely I also get the question a lot: do I miss it? And I really don't. I loved playing, and I loved my time in college and in the NFL, but it's been fun now to kind of transition a little bit more into real regular life, I guess you could say, and have a wife and a home, and not have to be on the road quite as much, and to get to hang out and have a regular job and hang out with people. So yeah, it's fun. The thing about playing in the NFL is that when you go to those cities, you really hang out mostly with your teammates, just because you have such an unusual schedule where obviously you're playing and practicing on the weekends, and usually your day off is on like a Tuesday, and then you leave all off season. So sometimes it can be tricky to really develop great community in those kind of places, especially if you're not signed to a really long-term deal and if you're bouncing around a lot. So it's the draft. It's definitely unique, and I'm excited for those guys who are going to get to start that journey now, and hopefully can make some really good decisions that will set themselves up for the future.
And you talked about injuries. Coach Bryant was famous for being cut out of a cast to play in the game, and you kind of did the same thing, take the Velcro off in a way. Talk about battling through the SEC championship game, national championship games with your ankle injury.
Yeah, so I had the foot injury. I tore a few ligaments in my foot my last year there in the SEC championship game early in the second quarter, and didn't really know what happened exactly. Just felt a pop down there and knew probably it wasn't good. And so I remember telling the doctors that I was probably going to have to talk to them about something at halftime, and knew it was really painful. And so the second half, just kind of wrapped it up really tight, and ended up going back out there and finishing the game. And then when it was over, got a chance to look at it and do an MRI and everything, and figured out that the Liz Frank ligament was torn, and which is a pretty key ligament. It's kind of like the ACL of your foot, holds everything together, and that it was going to be really tough. And usually it's a season-ending injury to the degree that I did it. But we made the decision that we were going to put in a cast for 4 weeks, let the swelling go down, because it was huge. It was about the size of a grapefruit, and let the swelling go down, and take it back out in 4 weeks, and wrap it up really tightly and see if we could play. And so we did that, and had I never really had a practice. I had 2 kind of walkthroughs, and then went back out there for the game. I didn't want to irritate it, and in the game it hurt, but I played okay, and so we killed Notre Dame, and all in all, I'm glad I did it, because it was a good way to finish my college career.
And we can't let you get by without talking about the famous conversation that you and AJ had over a call of alignment. So tell us what was going through your head.
I'm just glad I made it this long, because every time I talk, it's always the first question I get is people love to ask me why I pushed AJ. And, I always jokingly say that, the real question should be, why did AJ get in your face? That's the way I see it. I'm kidding. It really wasn't that big of a deal. It was obviously got a delay game penalty there, and the clock was winding down, and I was making a call, and he instead of kind of continuing with the count, I think stopped for my call, and we got a delay game, and we were frustrated, and he got in my face, and I pushed him, and so it was not a big deal in hindsight. I always jokingly say that he had a very clean jersey that night. We had taken good care of him. He threw 4 touchdown passes, and he had a model girlfriend in the stands, who's now his wife, Catherine. And so I always jokingly say that to him. But, it was not a big deal. And worked out just fine. And you saw we hugged a few minutes later. So all in all, it was a great career, and it was blessed to play with guys like AJ, and enjoyed being able to snap the ball to him. And we had a lot of great outings together.
Well, I think people probably need to understand that's part of communication. You don't always agree. I mean, you got to
No doubt.
It's happen, and you see different things. And of course, you probably will tell him all the time now that you had the right look. And
yeah, it's hard to even remember exactly what happened, but yes, it was. They shifted late in the count, and we had to get on the same page. So it is what it is.
And you mentioned your jobs earlier. Tell folks what you're doing now.
Yeah, so my main job is I'm actually a financial advisor in Memphis, Tennessee, working for a company called Strategic Financial, working from home really these last few weeks with a new baby. But I mostly specialize in financial planning and investment advice, and so manage money along with some of my teammates that work with me now, not football teammates, but guys that are on my team at work, and have really enjoyed it. I've been doing it a little bit over 3 years now, and have really enjoyed what I'm doing and love it. So my other job is I still work for ESPN. So last year I was the lead analyst for ESPN Radio for college football, and so I called 24 games, I think, on ESPN Radio. So every weekend, basically, I would leave and go and call a game on location. And was very blessed to have last year some incredible games, because ESPN Radio, there's usually only one game a week, and so we really get the pick of the best game. So I got to call the semifinal game last year between Clemson and Ohio State. I got to call the Orange Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, as well as a lot of other really fun games throughout the year. So LSU, Auburn, I got to call that one. And anyway, I actually called Alabama Ole Miss. I don't know, I'm not sure why. I guess that was a week for college football, but that was my only Alabama game last year. I think we're scheduled to have Alabama LSU this year, so I think that'll be a fun one down in Baton Rouge if the season obviously goes on like we hope it does. So it's been a really fun. I've enjoyed doing it. It's a fun. I did SEC Network my first 2 years, and then this past year was able to transition into ESPN Radio just when an opportunity came up and to be their lead analyst. So I have a great team, and I've really enjoyed. It's been a great little side gig for me, and keeps me in the game and keeps me talking about college football, which I love.
There's so many things to be decided whether to actually play or win. One of the things that was suggested was, I heard baseball talk about it just this morning, maybe play without fans in the stadium. As a player, can you imagine playing without fans in the stands?
It's definitely hard to imagine playing without fans. But I think that if that's what's got to happen, I think it could happen. I do think that the players want to play, the coaches want to play, the fans want to. Everyone I think wants to play. I know there'll be a lot of talk probably about the NCAA shouldn't make these college kids play, but I think they want to play. If I was in college, I would want to play, and obviously you have to figure out a way to do it safely, and you have to ramp up testing to make sure in that direct contact you're not passing along anything. But I don't know. The answer is no one really knows what it'll look like exactly, and whether it'll be reduced fans or no fans, or how it'll shape out. And on the broadcasting side, we're kind of wondering, will we be allowed to be there, or will we have to call the game remotely, or what that'll look like? So there's a lot of questions right now, more questions than answers. I do think if you had to ask me right now, there's an overwhelming sense that most people feel like college football will be played to some degree, whether that's a late start, whether that's a spring season even. I've heard some people say that. It seems like there's still a lot of positive energy to play the season in some way. But obviously we live in a time where everything is changing very quickly and will continue to evolve. And so we're going to keep an eye on it and see what happens.
Well, we really appreciate your time with us today. We're going to give you the last word, let you get a little pep talk to our Facebook followers, and let you lead us out today. Thank you so much for being with us. Thanks for everybody that's following us. Please share, like this, send it to your family and friends. And Barrett, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's, I would just say that the university had a huge impact on me, and I've really love my time in Alabama. I still feel, by the way, now being a broadcaster, I'm supposed to be unbiased, which sometimes can be difficult because I do love my university so much and loved my time there and feel so blessed to have been able to play there and feel like college to me was a really a great time of growth in a lot of ways as a man, and a time of spiritual growth for me where I really grew up and matured, and just really loved my time there. So I always enjoy being able to come back and visit and see old friends and old coaches who impacted me in such a big way. And so, I guess to the fans who are listening, just hang in there. I know this is a weird time right now where we're all doing things that are outside of our normal realm of life. But I've been trying to use this time really for myself, just to continue to try to focus on what's really important. I think sometimes when you are able to tune out some of the noise in your life of all the things going on, all the busyness, it can really help you refocus on what's really important. And so, for me, that's my family, my relationship with the Lord. Some of the things that I'm doing with my jobs, just to really kind of refocus on the important things. And I think that's always an important reminder for us, because our lives are busy. There's a lot going on, and obviously we want sports to come back. I think everyone wants that, but it can really kind of help you really figure out what makes you tick when you take some of those things away. So hopefully, we'll all be back to normal soon. But I think probably all of us will leave this process a little bit changed, and a little bit of just self-reflection upon, kind of about who we are and what the mark we're leaving on the world, and how we're impacting other people. So, I think I'm going to come out of this really motivated to, like I said, just really focus on relationships. That I think, a lot of times with our phones, with TV, I don't know about you guys, but I've gotten to the point now where, TV to me is just like, I hardly even turn it on anymore, because I mostly just watch sports. But now I just turn it on. I feel like there's just nothing ever on. And it's kind of like a waste of time to me. I'm not saying I'm never going to watch TV again. That's just an example of really kind of trying to figure out what's important and which relationships are really important. And the time we really have on earth is limited. So don't waste it. And like Gene Stallings always talks about, the dash in your life from the time you're born to the time you die. Make sure you make the most of it. So that's all I got. And again, thanks for having me on, and hopefully get to see you guys really soon.
Barrett Jones, everybody. Barrett, thank you, sir, so much for your time. You've been great to us here at the museum. We hope to have you back very soon so we can see you in person here at the museum. One last thing, roll Tide.
Roll Tide.